are watching Influence Media, PSI TV, the Netflix of biz brands.
My guest today is Dr. Madison Brightwell. She exchanged her British home for a beautiful North Carolina home. She's a former film and TV actress, and she took that ability to depict believable personalities on camera through her acting and transferred that ability to understand her client's perspective as a therapist. Further, her theatrical talent and therapeutic empathy for others appear in her novels and her intellectual writing. Dr. Brightwell has authored 3 self-help books and several novels. And in the limited time that we have today, we are going to focus on her latest creative contribution to humanity, The World Beyond the Redbud Tree. Welcome, Dr. Madison.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
All right. So would you prefer Madison, Dr. Brightwell? What would you prefer?
Madison is fine.
Madison. All right, perfect. So Madison, you have written many books. Now, I didn't read them all, but I did buy and read The Redbud Tree. Would you say that in general, your writing style or genre is psych-drama?
That's a really interesting question. No one's ever asked me that before or even come up with that idea. But I do think it does describe my books. I didn't intend for that to happen, but I actually wrote my 4 psychological crime thrillers before I became a therapist, which is really interesting and just demonstrates the fact that I've always been fascinated by human behavior and psychology. And of course, that underpinned all my work as an actress and definitely underpins my work as a therapist. And that is imbued in all of my novels and definitely in this latest one.
Well, I definitely saw it. And one of the interesting things I noticed as you talked about this, varied career is your career path and how you've cross-utilized all these skill sets and dramatic creativity and human psychology into your writing, I think is a fantastic accomplishment. And before we dive into your book, The World Beyond the Redbud Tree, I'd like you to speak to those who have had what appears to be a somewhat disconnected career path, but how those life experiences can actually create this tapestry that brings this personal fulfillment that you obviously seem to enjoy.
Yes, what I often tell my clients is there's a kind of an essence of you that you bring to every career path. And I actually started out as an actress. That was all I ever wanted to do. But when I became a therapist, that also seemed to be just kind of natural. It was a very organic process, moving from acting to therapy. And I very often love to tell my clients that you can have a fresh start at any age. I actually started my therapy journey at the age of 49. I was on the cusp of 50. And people find that very inspiring to know that they can change careers at a later date. It really doesn't matter. It's all coming from you. It's all about you and your unique purpose in this life. So once you discover what that purpose is, you can imbue any career with that purpose. That makes sense. So like for me, my purpose was to understand humans and later in life to guide them towards greater self-awareness and insight themselves. But first of all, of course, I had to gather that myself. So that was the kind of acting part of it and the being in the world part of it.
Well, Madison, you said you did that just before 50. You don't look a day over 50. So
oh, thank you.
How long have you been doing
it? Well, I've been a therapist for, not to give too much away, but more than a decade now. So,
wow.
Yes.
Wow. All right. Well, so I purchased and read The World Beyond the Redbud Tree. It is a page turner, that's for sure. So I often dreamed of the idea of a parallel world as a child. I'll just tell you, I had many dreams about that. And your main character, Charli, the main protagonist, without giving too much of the book away, because we do want people to go read it, but how does this whole parallel world fit into this whole mental health and healing? Because that's definitely what happened with Charli. How do you explain that, and from a therapeutic point of view?
Yes, what's interesting was I started writing this book when we were going through the pandemic. And of course, everybody was disturbed, distressed in different ways. And here in Asheville, I remember right after the pandemic, then we had the Black Lives Matter and the protests and all that. And I remember being really upset to see that our little mountain town was so negatively affected along with everyone else. It felt a bit like the world was falling apart. So that was why I wanted to write a book that was offering some hope and vision for the future. Very often when clients come to me and they say, you know, I've got these terrible tragedies going on, this crisis, whatever it is, I'm trying to help them look at the positive. I'm saying to them, if you focus on the negative, you'll get more of the same. And I think it's the same also with books. When you read lots of dysfunctional world novels, it starts to make your whole world feel darker and more menacing. In fact, I recently had a client who said she's only 24, and she said, I feel so worried about the fate of the world, you know, climate change and all that. And I watch all these dystopian programs on TV, and I read these dystopian novels. And I said, what you need to do is cut out that and focus on something more positive, more uplifting, more hopeful, more optimistic. Because I really believe that the first step towards creating anything is to visualize it. So that's what I'm hoping that people will do when they read my book. They'll start to visualize something that could be better. And then maybe collectively we can take some steps to get there, even just small little steps.
And when you talk about visualize, that is projecting into the future, which is creating a world that does not yet exist in your mind and walking into it. So that is okay, awesome. So like I said, I read the book, and there are a couple of quotes that I do want to ask you to unpack for me. I'm going to read this first one. Guys, you really should go read this for yourself. And I'm reading, so quote now. This was the scientist guy saying that every time something new happens or we make a decision or a choice, the world splits into two separate universes. There might be like trillions and gazillions of other parallel worlds out there. We just don't know it. So freaky. Is that what this is? Are you kidding me?
Yes, I actually many years ago read a book called Parallel Universes, written by a scientist, because I am very interested in you know, that kind of where science and spirituality kind of meet in that way, like quantum physics and things like that. I'm fascinated from a very layman's point of view. I am not a scientist, and I don't think I ever could be, but certainly things like that are really intriguing and fascinating to me. So you know, I definitely think it's possible. All sorts of things are possible that we don't know. And so why not, you know, envision a world where that is possible? Maybe that can help us with this world that we find ourselves in.
Yes, because, you know, you say, well, Charli says, something new happens when we make a choice or a decision. The world splits into two separate universes. Like in my world, when I am, you know, thinking through my possible next step, or if I have options, I will kind of say, if I make this decision and I kind of project where that could go, or instead, if I make this decision and I can project where that would go. And literally, if I walked either path, something of those versions could actually happen. So that's interesting right there. So Madison, one more quote from The World Beyond the Red Tree that I do want to dive into. I think it's the experience that Charli had that is typical of many who have deep issues that they actually never deal with. And I want to read it. And as I read it, I want you to think and help me answer that emotion that Charli is feeling of finally confiding something she's never shared before. Many people are in that space. They have something inside them they've never shared before. She's finally shared it, but she immediately seems to feel this overwhelm for having shared it. But then there's also the value of having someone she can confide in. As a therapist, speak to this.
Yes. Oh, I know so many of my clients really don't have anyone that they can confide in, and especially men, actually. I think men suffer a lot more with that because they don't tend to have those close friendships like women do, where we can be vulnerable and we can confide in someone in a very authentic way. And I think we all really need that. Because a lot of times, we're out in the world, it's a scary place. We put on this mask of I'm fine, everything's fine, I'm doing great, I'm a big success. Maybe we don't feel that inside. And it actually brings you closer to people when you are able to share that vulnerability and to recognize that everybody feels it. On some level, everybody feels like they're not completely 100% great. You know what I mean? So I think it's a very common experience, but a lot of people don't realize that everyone is going through something. And that might help them have empathy for others.
Yeah, so actually, let me read the quote that we just talked about here. It was where Charli said she hadn't realized before just how upset and agitated she was. I guess she realized that because she shared it. And now that she had someone to confide in, the emotions sensed a potential outlet and threatened to engulf her. And you just talked about men in particular not really having that person. My son has a best friend. They've been best friends for years. And can I tell you, Madison, I'll say to him, what's your best friend's favorite dish? Because I was going to have him over. He didn't know. What's your friend's favorite color? He didn't know. They don't talk about stuff like that. Men especially, just kind of grunt, and I don't know what they talk about. For all these years, they don't know these basic things, so I don't know how that works. So you mentioned that you wrote this book during COVID, but Madison, ever since COVID, the stigma of mental health, I think, has been reduced, and more people are actually willing to speak up about their challenges and to even seek some help. You have written self-help books. I know we're kind of focusing on the Redbud tree here, but you've written these self-help books, you've written these novels, and you use storytelling to show trauma and healing in an entertaining way. Other than being, entertained by Charli and her adventure, what else might a reader take away from reading your book, The Redbud Tree, The World of the Redbud Tree?
Interesting is that I definitely, people ask me where I get my characters. I definitely base the characters in this book on actual clients, not an actual client, but like an yeah, because I have many female clients who are in toxic, abusive relationships, trying to get out. Takes a lot of courage to make those kind of changes. And I think actually in this book, Charli has a lot more courage than her mom does.
Yeah.
Which you often find. In fact, I would say she's a bit parentified, what we call parentified, which means she's kind of the parent in the relationship. Her mom, her mother gets stronger. This is the first of a trilogy. And in the second book, the mother is a lot stronger and manages to, I'm trying not to give any spoiler alerts, but she manages to do better in relationships through working on herself. So I suppose what I'm saying is that, it takes courage, it takes guts, it takes the desire to change, but you can change if you really want to, and you do the work, because it is kind of work.
Yeah, I want to also chip in that sometimes we do really need the help to do the work, because not everything is a good DIY project.
Oh no, absolutely. And I don't like these new therapy things that have come out. Like I think is it Better Talk, Better Help or something, where they do it all on text. And I hate that, because you can't learn therapy on text. You have to have a personal relationship that you build with somebody. And the only way you can really communicate with somebody is through using all of the aspects of communication, which includes the nonverbal, The nonverbal is 87% of all communication. So that means tone of voice, physical, presentation. I can very often, I can just kind of tell when a client is emotionally affected by something, if they start to tear up or something, because I can see it. I would not be able to hear it. And of course, I wouldn't be able to know if that was happening on text. So it's very, very limited communication on text. So I think with therapy, you have to be really open. You have to see everything about the client. You have to see, how did they respond to what you just said? Did they take it in? Were they confused by it? I actually love Zoom for doing therapy. I was surprised because I never thought I would enjoy not being in person with people. But, oddly enough, it seems to help people feel more relaxed. They're in their own space. They didn't have to schlep out to your office where they might feel uncomfortable or the temperature might not be right. They are also, you are very much more close to them. You can actually see their whole face, which very often you can't in an office setting because they're about 10 feet away. So all of these things really do help that kind of very intimate kind of communication that we've got going on, where you can really kind of zoom in to what your client is experiencing in the moment.
All right. Well, you are a practicing therapist, licensed therapist, and you do offer telehealth services. I know you're talking about this whole Zoom thing. So you're talking about telehealth services. Are you actually taking new clients, or do you work with families, couples, kids? What's really the focus of your therapeutic services?
Yeah, I actually focus on trauma. I am EMDR certified, which is a trauma modality, and I love working with trauma. So I don't work with children or families. Occasionally, I work with couples, but it's mostly adults. And I'm pretty full most of the time. So yeah, I keep pretty busy, and certainly the pandemic was great for my business, I have to say. Kind of unfortunately so, but it's true what you say, that a lot more people are more open to considering therapy, and that is a wonderful thing.
It's not that more people need it. It's just more people are coming forward to say they need it. Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, Dr. Madison Brightwell, is there anything else that you'd like to share?
Oh, just, read the book. It's got some fantastic reviews on Amazon. I'm so thrilled. And every time I read one of those reviews where it raves about my book, I'm like, yes, it is a pretty good book.
Yeah. My review, by the way, because I'm a certified purchaser, so I will absolutely be adding mine.
Great.
Well, fantastic. There you have it, guys. My guest today, Dr. Madison Brightwell, and she has written The World Beyond the Redbud Tree. She's written other ones too, but that is the one that I personally read, enjoyed, and enjoyed talking with Dr. Brightwell about today. So her website will be in the comments, in the credits at the end, but it is madisonbrightwell.com, and I will put it in the credits so that you don't make a mistake in typing it. Dr. Madison Brightwell, thank you for being my guest today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.